Hello, this is Brian with Alpha IT Training, and in this video we're going to learn how to create a reverse pivot table. A reverse pivot table is where you take a crosstab structure and turn it into a more traditional tabular structure. Suppose you've downloaded some data from an external source and you're presented with what we have on the screen here. This is what we call a crosstab. The crosstab has a list of information going down the side, such as the employee names, a list of information going across the top, such as the products, and then in the middle is all the meat, all the information, such as the sales. So the idea with the crosstab is you say, oh, I want to take a particular column of information like exercise machines. I also want to take a particular row like Alan, and I want to find out what the sale for Alan's exercise machines are. Now this structure is all fine and dandy, but what if you wanted to create other pivot tables or pivot charts or regular charts, or you want to filter this information or sort the data? This isn't exactly the format that we need it to be in. What we really need is something that looks like this, a more traditional table structure, where each record is completely contained on its own row and every column represents the different categories. To go from a crosstab structure to a table structure requires a few steps, plus creating an intermediary pivot table that we'll end up throwing away at the end. But we will be able to go from here to here without a lot of retyping or a lot of copy pasting. Now before we can start, we've got to add a piece of functionality to our quick access toolbar that was taken away in 2007, and that is the pivot table and pivot chart tools. I'm going to go up to the quick access toolbar, hit the little arrow to the right, and then choose More Commands. This brings up our Excel options dialog box, and we're looking at a list of some of the more popular things that people like to add to the quick access toolbar. We need to get into those deep dark features, so we're going to hit the drop down and then choose Commands Not in the Ribbon. This gives us a list of all the things that are in Excel but either are not advertised at all or you really have to dig deep to get to them. So we're going to scroll down to the P's and find the pivot table and pivot chart wizard. I'll give that a click, hit add in the middle. That adds it to the right side of my screen, and then when I click OK, I now have the pivot table and pivot chart wizard button added to my quick access toolbar. Moving back to the downloaded data in the crosstab structure, I will go up and click the pivot table and pivot chart wizard button. This starts a three-step wizard. The first step, I'm going to change this to multiple consolidation ranges. This will give me the opportunity to go out and select my data. Next. Step 2, I will change this to I will create the page fields. Next. This part is where we go out and actually highlight the data. Now the important thing about highlighting your data is you always want to start highlighting in the upper left-hand corner of the data. This way when you highlight, it will include all of the employees, all of the products, and all of the sales. So in other words, we want all of our headings and all of our data. The thing that we do not want, however, are the totals. You do not want any column totals, row totals, grand totals of any kind. Now because my data set is rather long, highlighting this could become tedious, so I'm just going to click in the upper left-hand corner. Then I will manually scroll down to the bottom of the data, hold down my Shift key, and click what would be the last row of the data. And notice I am not selecting any of the column or row totals. I will now click Add. This adds the data range to my wizard. I will hit Next. And then finally the last question is just where do you want to put the pivot table? I'll put it on its own sheet and hit Finish. This will create an official pivot table, but this is just an intermediary step to get to where we actually want to go. The original tabular structure or cross-tabular structure had our sales totaled up as the mid part of the data. The intermediate pivot table is just a count of how many sales occurred for any given product for any given person. I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom and find the cell that has the grand total. And when you double click on the grand total, that will produce our table structure. Now that pivot table that we had just a moment ago, we no longer need this, so you can feel free to delete it. I can right click on the Sheet tab and choose Delete. Now I'm going to go back to the table that was generated by my double click. I'll clean this up a little bit by selecting the column headings and doing a little column resizing. Now the only downside to this is that by double clicking on the grand total in that pivot table, you're saying I need a separate record for every single product for every single salesperson. So even though Aaron did not have any sales for baseballs or basketballs or exercise machines, I still have to create a record entry of that in my data set. Now since I don't want any of those extraneous records, I could filter them out. I could go up here to the drop down for value, and I could scroll all the way to the bottom of my list, and I could say don't show the blanks, and I have effectively removed all of those blanks from my data. They're still there, and I really just don't want them in the data at all. So instead of filtering them out, we're going to delete them. So I'm going to clear that filter. And to do that, probably the easiest way is just to sort the value column, and you can sort it small to large, large to small, it doesn't matter. That will cluster all of the records that have numbers together, and then all the records that do not have numbers together. So I'm going to click the first value that has a blank. I will then do a Control-Shift-Down arrow to select all of the blank cells below me, and then I'm going to right-click in the blue and say Delete Table Rows. This leaves me with just the list of records that actually had activity. I can now take this, I can sort the list alphabetically by sales rep. I could clean up my heading row. So I've got customer, product, sale. And then if you don't plan on doing any filtering or sorting, you can also go up to the Data tab and turn off the filter controls. So here we have our nice, beautiful tabular list of information, which was derived from this original crosstab list of information. I can now take this table, I can create other pivot tables, I can create charts, pivot charts, I can filter, I can sort, I can slice and dice, I can do anything I want with the data. So we started off with a crosstab structure, and then by using the old school pivot table and pivot chart wizard, we were able to create a more traditional tabular structure of data.